Hey everyone, Adam Zock here. Wanted to explain the 10-year journey from being single, having an engineering job, to eventually getting married, having kids, getting into real estate, personal development, exiting the W-2 job, along with still having young kids and what that looks like now. So I have a short timeline of how I summarized some of this information. So if we look at what what this looks like, it started off back in 2011, got my master's in engineering, and it was kind of the typical, hey, here, get your job. I was good at math and science, met my future wife while in college, and the first property I ever got was I graduated from college, and it was really cool that I had a 4 bedroom, 2 bath. I could live in one, and my three roommates lived in the other one. They were paying me $400 a month in rent, and I think my mortgage was roughly $1,000 a month. This was pretty good terms. I think it was like a 3.5% interest rate. So that was the first property. And you'll notice I didn't get a second property for another 4 years. But eventually, like, was diving deep into the career. There was a lot of question marks on whether or not I even was interested in pursuing real estate investing, moving forward. And so I had a lot of questions on what I'm gonna do in life in general. Started kind of figuring my stuff out once I met my wife or wanted to propose to my now wife, Christine. And when we got engaged, I was kind of getting my stuff together. I was pretty immature young kid, just trying to figure out, hey, I got this job, not a ton of responsibilities, starting to make some money. What do I want to do in life? Kind of chasing the corporate ladder, maybe having some questions on whether or not I even like my job. But I actually learned one really important thing while shortly after getting married, which was reading my first personal development book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was almost this taking control of my own life versus blaming other people. That was a pretty big insight for me. And so part of that was learn to enjoy my engineering job. I was a civil engineer designing water treatment plants. And so instead of just being pissy and moany about going to engineering, it was, hey, in addition to pursuing side hustles, and I tried fantasy sports, tried day trading, tried building my own product. I had a bunch of basically I wanted financial independence. Fire sounded really good. 10K a month sounded really good. And so that was kind of the real estate happened to be the one thing that seemed to be gaining some traction based on my past, first investment property. But that first book was just like a game changer to now, you can see almost 6 years later, I'm on my 200th book plus and just started devouring everything on personal development, growth, leadership, financial independence, marriage, kids, all of the different pillars in life. And so reading that was a game changer to not only one, be a rock star employee. I believe that when I left engineering in 2022, that they actually ended up offering a great transition plan for me, which was like a full year of working part-time, still working in the office, and none of that would have been possible unless I had given them the better end of the doubt. I think in this 10 years that I was with Advanced Engineering, they got the better end of this deal. I was always trying to come up with new ideas, try to help, trying to sell, but I realized I was less of a technician and maybe more of a salesperson. So once I got into business development, that fit my niche. And so if people are really good at designing programs, find your niche and actually learn to enjoy. I don't know almost anyone who's been successful as an entrepreneur that wasn't also a good employee. I'm sure there's some exceptions, but typically, really good employees who are good at professionalism, have good leadership abilities, are very effective, can then start their own business. But if you're already not contributing to something larger than yourself, it's very difficult for you to then become super effective outside of that. So that would be recommendation that I might suggest is instead of just mailing it in at work, actually give work its integrity. And I'm not saying that I was perfect at this when my typical day was wake up super early, do the side hustle, be with the family, and then go to work. I was definitely doing a blend of engineering plus real estate investing throughout the day. And it used to be I was working 50 hours of engineering, then I trimmed that down to like 40. Then it was okay, some weeks um, I was taking PTO, some weeks I was doing something else, but there was definitely a blend of like, hey, between 8 and 5, I wasn't just doing engineering because we slowly started to build the company, slowly started to do other things. But in general, was always project based and helping my employer pursue or maybe making me at least 4 times billable. I mean, that was the typical, right? They're paying me $30 an hour and they're billing me out at 120 to 130. And as long as I was getting work done, doing different things, I was honoring that. Kid number one comes, and that was a big shift for Adam because now it wasn't just me and my wife doing a little bit of real estate. We had this new little human being, and that can really rock your world. It was both great, both a huge transition for me. Even kid number two, 2 years later, now where you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and my wife has the kid. Now it's like, oh, I guess I'm taking a kid, you're taking a kid, and we go from there. So the first kid was, I mean, it was awesome. It also gives a lot of new perspective in life. You have this young kid who you just love and you want to spend a ton of time with it. And so previously, where I maybe was running away from pain of like, hey, I'm kind of bored. This doesn't quite fit. Maybe I just don't like what I do. To now, this like, what would it look like if in 10 years, in 2027, I was a full-time stay-at-home dad with my youngest child at the time? And that was pretty motivating for me of like, okay, let's make this 10-year plan. In 2017, I had a 10-year plan. I was going to buy 2 properties every year for 10 years. And then after that, I was going to sell 2 and buy 2. And if I did that, I could replace my income. So it was like, great, 2 properties per year for 10 years. That's what we'll do. And then I ran into my current business partner in 2017, and we started combining our capital and our time, which was huge. So now instead of Adam trying to do everything as a solo entrepreneur, even though I wanted to get my wife involved with this, her heart was with the family. And so going back and sharing this kind of being able to talk with someone about this, frequently was huge for me. So that was great in 2017, still a partnership that we have to date. And then came the first mastermind, Total Life Freedom by Vincent. This is where I first paid to be part of a group that was a bunch of people seeking time, location, and financial freedom. I never paid $300 a month to be part of a mastermind. I joined it for like 2 months and was like, oh, I don't know if I can afford this. And turns out when you're strapped for time, you're maybe a little bit cheap and you've never invested in a mastermind, because I was just doing podcasts and books and that seemed like the right fit. You go through all of this and it's like, okay, I'm committed to this. And that was huge. I've bought in homes for people that have been in that mastermind. I've hired 3 to 5 people in that mastermind, still into that one to this date, and just a bunch of wonderful relationships because there's not a ton of people that just get you. Hey, I'm seeking financial freedom from my W-2 job. How many employees or colleagues do you talk to that share that same thing, maybe have a young family? So I kind of was finding my group. And then through that, investing in myself, now we started buying a bunch of properties through Zen. And we did some good, some bad. It was starting off just how do we cash flow at 12% cash on cash ROI? Do you think we can flip? What does this look like? So we started buying a bunch of homes. And then second kiddo comes, which was a different shift because now my eldest was becoming a toddler, which you have a toddler, and that's a whole new realm of, I think dads maybe aren't as well equipped with patience and understanding for a toddler brain. So I then started getting really curious with dads and young kids and like starting to absorb a bunch of different books. If you ever need a good listen to just to that might be different from personal development, Jim Gaffigan, Dad is Fat, is just an awesome listen to because he just speaks to dads with young kids on just being thrown up on, them laughing, them staying up through the night, and of course, sleep throughout this whole thing. Wow, good luck. And so you're trying to do all this stuff, and that's why I'm hoping to make this channel and make this content valuable is this 5 year period after you have your first kid, as you're maybe pursuing some financial freedom. It's like I think it's the most stressful and most critical time in your life. Maybe not so much as like the formative years 0 to 5. There's probably a bunch of psychology, but I can't think of another time where I'm like, oh, I'm sleep deprived and everything's front loaded, right? I want to invest in real estate because in 10 years it's going to be worth X. Well, I want to spend time with my family because if I invest the time with my family now, when they're 10, 12, 13, or before they leave, like that's going to pay off. Oh, I should invest in my health now because in 30 years I want to be really good. But the whole time your sleep habits are wrecked. You're probably not eating very well. Oh, by the way, you're most likely newly married and you have this entire relationship that you're trying to keep afloat where mama's maybe more in tune with the kids and you're trying to play more of a support role, but you still want intimacy with your wife. Like, how much more stress can we put on this? Oh, I know. Let's start another business. That'll help. In addition to our jobs, in addition to kids, in addition to the low sleep and all this, like, let's try to buy a bunch of properties. My wife, in general, did not like this idea. I would say I've only played the trump card maybe twice in our entire 10-year relationship, and real estate investing was one of them. She goes, okay, I'm not against you on this, but I'm not necessarily for you. But we ended up doing it, and maybe one day I'll bring her onto this and kind of talk through hers because she values security. So this is risk, and Adam's okay with risk, but that was probably one of the hardest conversations we had because she was like, and of course our first rental property, the first year it like flooded the basement and the tenants forgot to put down the downspout. We're pulling up carpet and we're like, yeah, this is not for us. We don't want to do this. Why did we ever choose to do this? And almost broke the resiliency of doing real estate to now having 50 plus properties. My wife and I are at home. We spend a ton of time together. I have just a ton of time with my kids and I'm able to invest in myself. So like almost wrecked that entire decision. But like this whole idea of you have you have just this potential idea, but you're already stressed for time. You don't have any time in the day. And so for me, getting really disciplined with time management was extremely effective. And so that was hiring out lawn, bringing in a cleaner, all the things that anything less than a $30 per hour task that I could get off of. Because if I worked 1 hour in engineering, if I can hire out a $10 to $15 an hour task, I got 2 hours of my life back. And so those were big things of just leveraging up my time and then becoming more effective so that I can increase my dollar per hour wage. But then in addition to that, it was okay, the bad Adam might stay up between 8 and 10 p.m. and watch some Netflix and argue that's like me time and just kind of decompress. To Adam at his best, either now or in the past, was I'm just going to fall asleep. And whether or not you're into co-sleeping, that's kind of a different story. I would just fall asleep with my eldest, my 2-year-old. Last night I fell asleep with my 5-year-old, my 3-year-old, and I go to bed on good times, 8 o'clock. That allows me to wake up at 4 o'clock, get 8 hours of sleep, get my morning routine in, do all those things that you can have 2 or 3 hours before the kids even wake up. And so if I replace that 8 to 10 p.m. with junk food and TV with like the 4 to 6 hour of like miracle morning reading, doing critical work, working out, all of those things, that was a game changer of just 2 hours a day of trading that from the back end to the front end. Let me keep going here through the list. So that's when things were really starting to shift and change and kind of getting on the same page. Super busy time of life. We created what is now Home Equity Partner, which really catapulted things because we went through a bunch of different iterations of what kind of real estate investing we want to do, whether it's single family, multifamily, flips, short term, long term. Like we were just figuring stuff out. We fumbled a lot, but eventually landed on this. And again, with the same partner. And I'm going to say, like, these next 2 years were probably the funnest time in my life looking back. I was building a business, building a family. I was so, so time strapped, but it was because I didn't let anything else in. I was either an engineer, a family man, or a real estate investor, and basically didn't let anything else in. There was so many different opportunities, and it's tough of do I go to a networking event or do I do this? But I don't think I ever had as much clarity as that time where I was like, does it fit into these three buckets? If not, I'm not doing it. And there's a little bit of a route to like, okay, well, how am I taking care of myself during that, just with health and sleep and personal development, which I think fuel all of these three things. So there's maybe a base of just general personal development and leadership that's probably wrapped around all this. But in general, how am I spending my time? And that was so critical. Just like young kids, young family, young business, I could finally start to see the end of like, holy cow, this could be real, could quit our jobs, and what does that potentially look like? Started joining even more masterminds, the W2 capitalists, where these are individuals with a W2 job trying to leverage their W2 because they're extremely bankable. You can, put the 20% down, you're making good income. How do you get a high ROI? Then started getting into some dads groups, some real estate ones, and then more recently, some more dads group, became a loan originator. But then that's when the properties really started to take off. So it was, I think I actually have another graphic here. Yes, this one where someone actually made this from my pipeline. Q, thanks for making this. So this was the number of homes, and again, Adam doesn't own all these, but within an LLC, these are the ones that directly control. But it was like 2012 one, 2016, and you can just see how quickly that hockey stick growth. But it starts with one, waiting 4 years, waiting a couple years, and then it just really starts to take off. So the importance of, okay, this is 10 years, but where are you starting in 2012 and how much that impacts your overall trajectory? If I had waited 4 years, things would got pushed, potentially got pushed back 4 years. So that was a huge insight for me. Eventually in 2022 was like, hey, I'm done. I don't need this, job anymore. We worked out a nice transition where I worked from 40 hours a week to then 20 to then last year putting in like 12 hours throughout the entire year. And then they eventually said, hey, you can't use the office anymore. Like you're going to have to kind of be done. But like, what a great year to 2 year transition of getting out of that, figuring out healthcare, figuring out all those options, and then now continually just to pour into my family, creating our businesses, and now it's just a whole different kind of life. So I'm hoping that this was not impossible, but more of an inspiration of what does this look like as a 10-year plan? How many homes do I have to buy? And you don't have to do it in 5 years. Even if you made a 20-year plan, what if you could just retire 5 years earlier, buy 2 or 3 investment properties? So that's the piece. And just want to encourage you that now with getting that freedom, is it worth it when your kids are young? To me, it absolutely was, because now that my kids are 5, 3, and 1, and we have all of this location, more time freedom, we're not financially, killing it. It's just you got enough to allow me to buy my time back. My wife quit her engineering job 2 years ago so that she could stay with the youngest kid for a full time, and just wanted to share this story with you as an inspiration of what is possible.